Autism 1. There are two things most people do when they notice their cat drooling. The first is a quiet, almost reflexive "you," a quick reach for the blanket edge, a gentle wipe, and then moving on without a second thought. The second is a small flash of worry. Is something wrong? Should I call the vet? Both reactions are completely understandable, and both of them, in their own way, miss what's actually happening. Not because the worry isn't valid, sometimes it is, but because in this particular moment, in this particular context, your cat isn't sending you a distress signal. She's sending you something else entirely, something far more rare. Before anything else, let's set your mind at ease, because carrying that low hum of health anxiety won't let you absorb what comes next. Drooling that happens during calm, contented moments, when she's purring, settled, and physically relaxed in your presence, is a very different thing from drooling that comes with distress. If you're ever seeing it alongside changes in eating, pawing at the mouth, or signs that something feels off, that's always worth a conversation with your vet. But if the drool appears only in these quiet, unhurried moments when she's melting into you, that context matters enormously. Hold on to that distinction, because it's the door that opens everything else. Here's what's quietly remarkable about this behavior, and why it deserves more than a passing glance. Cats are extraordinarily composed animals, not in a cold or detached way, but in the way of a creature that has always had to be precise about where she places her vulnerability. She doesn't approach just anyone. She doesn't settle into just any lap. Every choice she makes about proximity and contact involves a kind of inner calculation that happens so naturally it looks effortless. She has a default setting, and that default is self-possession. What you're watching when she drools is that default, switching off, completely. That's not a small thing. Think about what it means for an animal, this careful, this deliberate, to reach a state where her body simply stops managing itself. No guard up, no edge to her awareness. She isn't monitoring the room. She isn't calculating her next move. She isn't holding herself with that quiet, collected tension that cats carry even in sleep. She has released all of it. And the drool, that small, unplanned, thoroughly undignified little detail, is the physical evidence of that release. It's not something she chose. It's something that happened because she forgot to stop it. Or rather, because she had no reason to. That quality, the involuntary nature of it, is what separates this from almost every other form of affection your cat shows you. When she slow blinks at you from across the room, that's a choice. When she brings her forehead to your chin, that's a deliberate gesture. Even her purring, though largely automatic, can shift with her mood. But drooling during petting doesn't work like that. It isn't a signal she decides to send. It isn't a performance. It happens below the level of intention, in a place her conscious mind doesn't reach, which means it cannot be manufactured. It cannot be offered politely or strategically. It simply is. Most cat owners, when they first notice this, don't have a framework for understanding it. It gets filed under funny quirk or just a cat thing, and life moves on. But feline behaviorists who study the states cats enter during close human contact have noted something consistent. This level of physical release is not common, not automatic, and not randomly distributed. It doesn't happen in every environment. It doesn't happen in every relationship. It happens in very specific conditions, and those conditions have everything to do with the particular safety your cat associates with one specific person, one specific presence, one specific set of hands. So when you felt that damp patch and looked down at her, eyes soft, purring steadily, completely elsewhere, you were witnessing something most people never think to name, a threshold being crossed. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just quietly, the way your cat does everything that actually matters. The question most people never ask is, what does it actually take for a cat's body to reach that place? What is happening inside her, neurologically, emotionally, in that exact moment? Because the answer to that question changes how you see the whole scene. It turns out it isn't simple. And it isn't just about being comfortable. There are layers beneath that purring, beneath that settled weight in your lap. Layers that connect this moment to something much older, much deeper, and much more specific to you than most people realize. The science of what her nervous system is doing right now is genuinely surprising, and it begins with understanding something that cats, by nature, almost never give up willingly: control. There is a state the body enters when it feels completely, unconditionally safe. Not just relaxed, not the kind of relax that comes from a comfortable couch or a warm room, but the deeper kind. The kind where the nervous system stops scanning, stops preparing, stops holding the quiet tension it carries everywhere else. In humans, we recognize this state in the moments just before deep sleep, that heavy, boneless feeling when the body finally stops bracing. Cats enter something remarkably similar. And when your cat reaches it in your presence, her physiology responds in ways she has absolutely no control over. The drool is one of them. It is not the cause of her calm. It is the proof of it. To understand what's happening, you need to know something about how a cat's nervous system is organized, not in a clinical way, but in a way that makes what you saw on that blanket suddenly feel significant. A cat's body, like all mammals, operates along a spectrum. On one end is the alert state, heightened, responsive, ready. On the other end is something feline behaviorists refer to as a parasympathetic-dominant state, the biological opposite of fight or flight. In this state, the body downregulates everything that isn't immediately necessary. Heart rate softens, muscles release, and certain physiological responses that are normally held in check, including salivation, can activate passively, without any conscious trigger. Your cat isn't choosing to drool any more than you choose to breathe in your sleep. What makes this especially worth sitting with is how rarely cats reach this end of the spectrum in the presence of another living being. A cat can be deeply asleep in a sunlit patch on the floor and still carry a light layer of readiness, an ear that pivots, a muscle that holds. The nervous system of a solitary perceptive animal like a cat doesn't fully power down just because the environment feels neutral. It powers down when the environment feels safe, and safe for a cat is not a passive assessment. It is an earned one. It accumulates over time, through repeated experience, through pattern recognition that goes deeper than thought. When your cat reaches that parasympathetic state in your lap, she isn't just comfortable. She has concluded, at a level below conscious decision, that nothing in this moment requires her protection. You've probably noticed that your cat's drooling, when it happens, often comes alongside something else, a slow, rhythmic kneading of her paws against your leg or the blanket beneath her. That's not a coincidence. Feline behaviorists have observed that these two responses, drooling and kneading, to surface together, and that's because they share a common origin. They belong to the same neurological pathway, activated by the same kind of deep, layered comfort. One doesn't cause the other. They're more like siblings. Two expressions of the same internal state, arriving at the same time because they come from the same place. Where that place leads is something we'll come back to, because it's the part of this story that changes everything. Here's something worth considering about the cat you share your home with. She moves through her days with a composed, self-contained quality that people often mistake for indifference. She chooses her moments of closeness carefully. She approaches on her own terms, withdraws when she needs to, and maintains a kind of interior life that feels at times genuinely private. That composure is not a wall. It is a standard. It reflects the discernment of an animal who does not distribute her trust casually, who does not perform vulnerability for the sake of social ease. Her default is not aloofness, it's discretion. And drooling is what happens when that discretion dissolves entirely, because the one condition it required has been fully met. That condition is you, not a warm lap in general, not the abstract concept of human presence. You specifically, the particular rhythm of your hands, the specific weight of your voice in the room, the accumulated familiarity of every quiet hour she has spent in your company. Cats don't enter this state with strangers. They don't enter it in new environments, or in the presence of people whose energy feels uncertain. Research into feline-human attachment suggests that the nervous system of a domestic cat is highly sensitive to relational familiarity, that the calming response isn't triggered by comfort alone, but by the presence of a specific trusted individual whose proximity the cat has learned to associate with safety over time. This doesn't happen with everyone in your home. It may not even happen with everyone your cat is fond of. It happens where the trust runs deepest. So when someone tells you, as people inevitably do, that cats don't really bond, that they're just using you for warmth and meals and a convenient place to sit, you can hold this moment quietly in your mind. Not defensively, just clearly, because what they're describing is an animal that remains guarded, that keeps one part of itself in reserve, that never quite releases. And what you witnessed on that couch is the opposite of that. What you witnessed is a nervous system that stopped guarding. Completely. In your presence specifically, and not in spite of who your cat is, but because of who you are to her. What you're watching isn't a biological glitch. It isn't a malfunction or an accident or a meaningless reflex. It is her nervous system telling you something her face will almost never say directly. The question that follows naturally, the one that deepens all of this, is where does this response come from? Why does a cat's body even have this capability? Why does deep safety specifically unlock this particular physical release? To answer that, we have to leave the present moment entirely. We have to go back to the very beginning of her life, to the first time her nervous system ever learned what complete safety felt like, and what it felt like to receive it from someone else. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the earliest days of a cat's life. Not the curious, playful kitten you might picture, but something younger, smaller, more vulnerable than that. A newborn, eyes still sealed shut, entirely dependent on warmth and closeness and the steady presence of her mother. In those first weeks, the world is not yet a visual experience. It is a sensory one, the rhythm of a heartbeat nearby, the warmth of a body against hers, the repeated, gentle stimulation of being groomed and held and nourished. And woven into all of that, inseparably, is the act of nursing. That experience, warm, rhythmic, physically close, completely safe, is the first template her nervous system ever receives for what it feels like to be without fear. During nursing, something specific happens in a kitten's body that matters deeply to this conversation. The warmth, the rhythmic contact, the closeness, and the nourishment all converge into a single neurological experience, one that feline behavioral researchers suggest leaves a lasting impression on how the nervous system learns to recognize safety. Salivation is a natural integrated part of that early feeding response. So is kneading, those slow alternating paw presses that nursing kittens use to stimulate milk flow. These aren't just feeding behaviors. They are, at a neurological level, the original language of comfort, the first conversation the body ever had with the concept of being fully, completely held. And for many cats, that language doesn't disappear when kittenhood ends. It goes quiet, but it doesn't disappear. What behavioral research in this area points toward is something genuinely moving, that certain tactile experiences in adulthood, the slow, rhythmic stroke of a hand along the back, the warmth of a body beneath them, the particular quality of stillness that comes with someone who isn't rushing anywhere, can echo that original neurological template. Not because the adult cat has confused you with her mother. That framing doesn't capture what's actually happening, and it undersells both of you. What's happening is more precise than that. The emotional quality of the safety she feels in your presence has reached the same register as the deepest safety she has ever known. Her body recognizes that quality, and it responds the way it was first wired to respond when everything was okay, when she was held, and warm, and completely without fear. This is not regression. It is not a sign that your cat is somehow stuck in infancy or unable to distinguish past from present. It is, if anything, the opposite. It is evidence that she has built a present-day relationship rich enough and safe enough to touch something foundational. Think about what that actually requires. Months, sometimes years, of accumulated experience, countless small moments of gentleness that her nervous system quietly cataloged every time you moved slowly around her. Every time you let her come to you instead of reaching, every time you stayed still while she settled, she was building something, even when it didn't look like it. And what she built was a felt sense of you as a source of safety so consistent, so reliable, that her body eventually stopped bracing when you were near. That doesn't happen quickly, and it doesn't happen with just anyone. Research into feline attachment behavior, including work that has examined how domestic cats respond to their primary caregivers compared to strangers, suggests that many cats form what can genuinely be described as secure attachment bonds. These are not simply habits of proximity. They reflect an internal working model of the relationship, a deeply held sense that this particular presence is safe, responsive, and trustworthy. Cats who display this kind of attachment seek closeness during stress, settle more readily in the presence of their person, and show physiological signs of calm, lower arousal, reduced tension that aren't present with others. Drooling in this context sits at the far end of that spectrum. It is what secure attachment looks like when it reaches its quietest, most complete expression. Now think about the selectivity of it. Your cat does not drool in the waiting room at the vet. She does not drool when a house guest reaches down to pet her, even a gentle one. She may not drool with other members of your household, even people she likes, even people she chooses to sit near. The nervous system doesn't reach this state just because the environment is pleasant or the person is kind. It reaches this state when safety has been confirmed at a level that is specific, earned, and personal. If she drools only with you, only in your lap, only under your hands, that selectivity is not random. It is the most honest answer her body knows how to give to the question of where she feels most herself. And for those of you watching whose cats have never drooled, not once, not even close, this is important. The absence of drooling is not the absence of depth. Cats express the same interior states through wildly different physical channels. Some cats slow blink. Some go boneless and heavy in your arms. Some press their forehead against yours and hold it there for a breath longer than necessary. Some simply choose, every single evening, to be in whatever room you're in, not demanding anything, just orienting themselves around your presence the way a plant orients toward light. This video is about decoding one particular channel of that communication. The trust it describes is not exclusive to cats who drool. It is just perhaps the most undeniable version of it. You are not just petting your cat in those moments. You are being trusted with her most unguarded self, the version of her that exists beneath the composure, beneath the discretion, beneath everything she keeps carefully managed with the rest of the world. She didn't hand that to you all at once. She gave it to you in increments, so slowly you may not have noticed it happening. And now here she is, purring in your lap, completely dissolved, completely present, completely yours in the only way a cat ever truly belongs to anyone, by choice, by accumulation, by a trust that her body has decided is safe enough to stop hiding. What she's asking for, in return, is quieter than you might think. She isn't asking for anything grand. That's the first thing to understand about what this moment means, and what it doesn't demand of you. Cats who reach this state of complete physical ease aren't making a request for more, or better, or different. They aren't asking you to change anything. The drool, the purring, the slow weight of her settling deeper into your lap, none of it is a petition. It is a receipt. A quiet acknowledgement that what you have already been giving her, your presence, your gentleness, your consistency, has been received, accumulated, and held. She is not asking you to begin something. She is telling you that something has already been built, and she is resting inside it. That reframe matters more than it might seem at first. Because most of us, when we think about our relationship with our cat, position ourselves as the ones who give, and our cats as the ones who receive. Or don't, depending on the day, depending on the mood, depending on whatever private calculation seems to be happening behind those half-closed eyes. We offer affection and then wait, sometimes hoping, sometimes second-guessing. But what drooling in your presence actually reveals is that the dynamic was never quite that one-directional. You were building something together. Every quiet evening you spent in the same room, every time you read her signals and gave her space, every soft word spoken in her direction that asked nothing back, she was registering all of it. Quietly, carefully, the way cats do everything important. You were not just her caretaker in those moments. You were becoming her safe place. There is something profound about being someone's safe place. Not just a comfortable presence, but the specific person whose nearness allows another living creature to completely release their guard, to stop managing, to exist for a little while without the low-level vigilance that follows most cats through even their most peaceful hours. You gave her that. Not through any single dramatic gesture, but through the kind of steady, undemanding presence that is, in the currency of feline trust, worth more than almost anything else. The safety your cat feels with you was not given to her. It was earned by you, one unhurried moment at a time. That is not a small thing. That is quietly everything. And here is the part that deserves to be said plainly, without hedging, without softening it into something smaller than it is. The next time someone tells you that cats are indifferent, that they don't form real bonds, that they're simply opportunistic, that the affection you feel flowing between you is mostly in your imagination. Remember this moment specifically. Remember that her body, without her permission, without any performance involved, chose to let go. Not because you had food in your hand, not because the room was warm, not because she had nowhere else to be. Her nervous system released because it recognized you, because it has learned, through months or years of living alongside you, that you are the one presence in her world where nothing needs to be held in reserve. That is not indifference. That is its precise opposite. The people who say cats don't bond deeply have usually only ever seen a cat from the outside, observed the composure, noted the self-sufficiency, and drawn their conclusions from the surface. They haven't sat quietly enough, long enough, to see what you've seen. They haven't felt the specific weight of a cat who has genuinely let go. What they're describing when they call cats aloof or emotionally unavailable is the very discernment that makes this moment possible. A cat who trusted everyone equally, who dissolved into every lap, who drooled for any gentle hand. That cat's surrender would mean nothing. It is precisely the guardedness, the careful selectivity, the fact that she does not give this to the world at large, that makes what she gives to you something worth holding gently. She didn't choose to drool, but she chose you. Long before that damp patch appeared on your blanket, she was already choosing you. In the way she tracked your movements without following them, in the way she appeared in doorways when you were in another room, in the way she arranged her sleeping spots around the geography of your daily life. The drool is just the moment when the choice became visible, when the internal architecture of her trust finally became something you could see and feel and now understand. She has been telling you this for longer than you realized. You just needed the right lens to read it. If your cat has ever done this with you, if you felt that small damp warmth and looked down at a face that was completely, utterly at peace, we'd love for you to share it in the comments. Where were you? What were you doing? Was it the first time? Or has it become one of those quiet rituals that happens without either of you planning it? These moments deserve to be named, not just noticed and wiped away. They are some of the most honest things that happen between a person and a cat, and they belong in a conversation, not just in a private memory. The next time it happens, and if it has happened before, it will happen again. You won't reach for the blanket quite as quickly. You'll pause. You'll look at her face, soft and unguarded and entirely elsewhere, and you'll know what you're seeing. Not a quirk, not a glitch, not something faintly embarrassing that you half mentioned to your vet. You'll know that what you're holding in your lap in that quiet moment is the full, undefended trust of an animal who chose you carefully, built something with you slowly, and is now resting so completely in that choice that her body has simply forgotten to hold anything back. Stay a little longer in that moment. It's rarer than it looks, and it was made entirely for you.